This is Lee Dort, and I'm down to dunk. This is Lee Dort, and I'm down to Dort.
I'm Josh Giddey, and I'm down to dunk.
Hey, this is Kenny Hustle, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Darius Baisley, and I'm down to dunk.
I'm Mike Muscala, and I'm down to dunk.
This is Poku, and I'm down to dunk.
I love cereal. Captain Crunch, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Cracklin' Oat Bran.
Oh, I can have these. I'm going to share with my team, but I'm a hog most of them.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schleck. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me, as always, on Wednesdays is my good friend, Alex Spears. Alex, what's up?
What's up?
We're almost like fully back. Sam Presti.
Are we?
We're getting close.
Are we?
We're getting close.
Am I really supposed to be excited about the preseason, Andrew?
Oh yeah. I'm excited about it.
What are your top? Let's do your top 5 Thunder preseason moments through history. Can you name 5 things that have happened in the preseason?
Steven Adams making a 3.
Literally the first thing I thought of. Okay,
that was great. It was like the first play of the first preseason game. He's sitting and camped out in the corner.
Name another one.
The yearly tradition of us thinking Russ will play defense every year.
And we're such idiots that we thought it would show itself during preseason.
Every year he was like hustling, like this is a new thing. Moment number 3, Scott Brooks putting movement into the offense during the preseason, and us thinking that it really meant that changes were going to happen. Samaj Kristen showing out in the preseason and getting that spot over Ronnie Price.
This is so funny because you're basically proving why I do not care about preseason, because every single thing you have named is something that turned out to be completely false and did not matter for the regular season at all.
That's why it's fun. That's what's fun about it. You get to see different things.
You get to pretend.
30-point bays coming at you in the preseason.
He might. Would not shock me.
This preseason, though, is going to be at least mildly interesting just because they've got 20 guys on the roster. And like guys that we all know. Because a lot of times they'll sign these like Exhibit 10 guys. And it's like, I don't even know who that is. If they cut him tomorrow, I won't remember his name ever. You know. But there are 20 guys on this team. And we know pretty much all of them. I mean, Eugene Omoyuri is the only guy that I think most people would be like, I have no idea who that is. And he's on a 2-way. So he's on the 2-way until they cut him. But everybody else, I mean, like everybody, we saw 2,000 minutes of Teo Maladone his rookie season. Like we've seen these guys play. And there's going to be some guys that are going to be cut. And I think that to me will be the most interesting thing is like, does the preseason have anything to do with who they're going to cut? Is it training camp or they probably already have a really good idea of who they're going to let go.
Yeah, it has to be training camp because, I mean, like Michele was talking about his most interesting thing was going to be just the rotation, which like that was my first thought too. But then the more I thought about it, it was like they're going to have to play all these guys. Otherwise, what's the point of bringing them all into training camp?
They got to play them.
So, I don't know what he's going to do. Like, I'm assuming Shea's going to play like 15 to 20 minutes, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, how else do you get Teo Maladon like 10 minutes?
I don't know.
Unless they handle it like summer league, where like by the end of the preseason, it is just like all the backups and
Yeah.
third string guys.
Yeah, it could be. It
Maybe
could be
that's what they
the
do.
last like 2 or 3 games where the starters don't play at all.
So right now, so they have to cut 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, where are you at? Like, what is chalk for you? It's Teo.
So the guys that are on the chopping block, Beat Krejci is there, Teo Maladone, Derek Favors, Ty Jerome are all guys that I think could get cut. I don't know if just the lack of big guys gives Favors a chance to make the team. Not make the team, but like stay here.
Yeah.
Like maybe they want him to stay here now because a ton of center minutes just opened up, and we know that Mike Muscala can't play a lot of them. And Jeremiah, I think they want him to play center, but do you want him to play center for 25 minutes a game? I mean, probably not. So there's a chance that they're just like, yeah, we might need to just hang on to Favors because Chet was going to play a ton of minutes at center. I mean, that was going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what about Jay Will?
I got to see more. Honestly, I need to see what he's one that needs to have a good training camp and needs to play well to not just like almost be exclusively a G League player.
Yeah,
because he looked almost unplayable even in summer league, but maybe that changes like with the NBA regular season and being more part of like a team construct could help would help a player like him. Summer league is for the guys that can create on ball. Summer league is for guys that can play like great one-on-one defense. Summer league is not necessarily the team defense, decent passer at the nail, can do the little things. Like that's not what summer league is for.
yeah, and he'll get to play with better players.
Yes, playing with better players.
Even though our summer league team was stacked, to be fair,
basically this team
was basically this team, except for Dort and Shea.
Yeah, I mean Jay will get a chance. I don't know if I were to bet, I would bet that he's not in the rotation at all to start the season, and then we'll see him mixed in as we go.
If you had to put a percentage on it, what is the chance that one of the cuts is a surprise, like not one of the 4 names you've been talking about?
I'd say it's pretty low because like then who would it be? Like
I don't know. That's why it's a surprise, Andrew.
I mean, like the surprises of the guys that I think realistically that they would say, you know what, we got to let them go. I would say that list is Darius Baisley, Poku, and Jay Will, right?
Yeah, those would all be shocks.
Those would be shocking. Like it would be weird if they cut any of those guys in favor of Ty Jerome or somebody like that. That's why like I still think there's a good chance that Favors could be gone. Just because there's so many, like, what are we doing here if we're gonna hang on to Derek Favors and cut, Jay Will? What's going on here? That is not even close to like what the goals are or what this team wants. I think that if you were trying to win basketball games, like that's an easy thing to do. Like give me Derek Favors in favor of Jalen Williams from Arkansas.
That's what Danny Ainge is going to do, Andrew. He's not going to do what OKC is doing.
Sure.
The nasty little things we're doing.
Yeah. People just forget though that like we have Muscala and Kenrich Williams on this team. And not only do they forget it, they also, whenever they do remember it, they're like, oh yeah, they have those guys. Get them out of there.
Yeah.
Get those guys off that team. We need to, could a late first round pick get Kenrich Williams? Like get him off that team. I'm
just excited that there's going to be more teams blatantly tanking this year, and because it'll be a true test. Like, will they catch the eye of the national media? Will anyone care? Probably not, but it's worth a shot.
Yeah, the Thunder have made themselves the face of tanking.
They have, and I feel like we played a role in that. But at the same time, leave us alone. Maybe we shouldn't have done that. Maybe we should have been as surprised as certain OKC fans. Like, oh my, what is this?
I mean, what's going on here? This team is going to be good. They're going to win game. We're going to get to the play-in. Yeah. There's no way.
I was looking because someone DM'd me, fan of the show.
Yeah.
I don't remember who it was. They were asking me, shout out at Batlin Rise, asking me if we're going to do surprise team, for Slam and Jam.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going through the list because, I set myself very strict rules.
Yeah.
And basically you can't have an over under above like 36. It's like somewhere around there. And man, the crop of teams this year, because there are so many that are either obviously bad or obviously tanking.
Yeah.
It's going to be a challenge. I was just doing my initial glance over just who are the teams I can choose from. And as a reminder, I have to choose a team that's going to win at least 10 more games than their over under.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. And I'm nervous.
Yeah.
I'm nervous. I haven't dove too deep, but
I mean, it's like, the teams would be like Washington, Utah, Sacramento, Detroit, OKC, Orlando, Indiana, Houston, San Antonio.
Yeah, that's basically all of them. And one of those teams, if history holds, will likely win 10 more games than their over under. So you just gotta identify. I mean, last year the Cavs was a crazy pick.
Yeah,
to win 10 more games, and it happened. So it does happen. And in fact, I think Minnesota might have hit it as well. So it happens, but this is a tough year for it.
It is a tough year. If I were to my early pick without really diving into it at all, would probably be the Kings, which is like the dumbest thing possible.
Interesting. Yep. I see a lot of Kings buzz, probably because I follow a lot of Kings people. It's my fault. No one outside Sacramento is really buzzing, but there are definitely some Kings fans buzzing.
Yeah, I don't know that Detroit can win 39 games.
That'd be super impressive if they did. Integrating 2 rookies and then winning 39 games. Although, to be fair, I mean, the way we talk about the Thunder pre-Chet injury, I mean, they were going to be integrating a lot of rookies, and there were a lot of people who like legitimately thought they could win, 35 games, which honestly wouldn't have shocked me if they had done that. Like if they played that entire healthy team the entire year, it was not out of the realm of possibility. So maybe Detroit can do something. It is just you're taking so many mental leaps, especially when you're not a fan of that team. Like we're embedded with the Thunder, so we know all these guys. We feel like we understand their projections, what they could realistically do.
Right.
When you look at another team, it's like, man, I'm just supposed to believe that Jalen Duren's just gonna be a starting center from day one, ready to go.
Really in on Isaiah Livers and believe that Isaiah Livers can be a starting player in this league, which is like part of the buzz that's happening in Detroit right now, which makes me believe that I might take the under on that 28.5.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's a tough one. What are you going to be watching for? You're gonna watch the preseason. Like we're just sickos. We have to do it. What are you looking for? Are there things you're looking forward to? Are there things like, I hope that I get to see this?
In the preseason.
Yeah, preseason or like little buzz out of training camp.
I mean, I think about players who, because there are players that we feel are kind of locked in to their role. Hold on just a second. Hank is being so annoying.
If you're on our stream, you would have seen Hank walking across Alex's keyboard.
What?
I said if you're on YouTube, you would have seen Hank walking across your keyboard once already.
I'm sure other people's dogs do this. He if I go into a room by myself, he will bark until I let him in.
Yeah.
And then literally 5 minutes after he's been in that room, he is barking to get out.
It's like, I've seen all I need to see. Get me out of here.
Until 2 minutes later when he is back at the door barking to get in. Okay. Okay. I was talking about how there's guys on this team where we feel like their roles are pretty locked in. So listen, there's nothing I'm going to see from Shea or Giddey or Dort.
There's nothing you can see from a 19-year-old Giddey that you would be like, oh, okay, wow.
In the preseason, no.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because even if he came out and shot like 5 of 10 from 3, it's like, does that mean anything? Like, no, it doesn't. So
it would be great. I'd like it. I don't know if it would mean anything, but I would sure like it.
And those guys, those 3 in particular, and if he was healthy.
How about Dort looks pretty yoked.
Yeah. What is that? What am I going to take away
I don't know
from that in the preseason? Wow. Dort looks huge. Definitely not one of the most exciting things. My point is that
those braces off.
Those guys are locked into 30 to 35 minutes a game, regardless of what they do in the preseason.
Yeah.
And if they're going to have to play all these guys at the end of the bench, they're probably not going to play a ton of minutes ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
So the guys I'm interested in are actually the guys who we don't know what their role on this team is going to be, and that's guys like Darius Baisley, Alexei Pokushevsky. Guys who we've seen
them
for a while, because honestly, similar to what I just mentioned about Shea, Dort, and Giddey, like I feel similar about J-Dub. Like I'm excited to see him, but at the same time, he's a rookie, so I'm not going to like go crazy no matter what happens. Like if he comes out and he's not the guy from Summer League and he's just not good, I'm not freaking out. Like who cares? It's preseason. But for someone like Baisley or someone like Poku, who we now have multiple years of NBA basketball under their belt, under our belt, both of our belts, those are the guys I'm most interested in, because that's where it feels like from an outsider's perspective, the rotation battles are happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so, who does Daigneault default to in these games, like to start with?
The Daigneault default.
Who is he playing more minutes? What kind of role are those guys having on the court when they're in there?
Mm-hmm.
As we've mentioned many times, Poku in the second half of the season, maybe you didn't always notice everything happening on the court, but when you went back and looked at his season-long stats and then focused in on that second half of the season, it was kind of wild. Like his plus minus on the team, the way he was finishing around the rim. So you just wonder, especially for a guy who, similar to Bays, hasn't really had like a real NBA season. Like, I mean, both with COVID and then with him going to the G League for like random months.
Yeah.
Like this is his first full, or I guess last season. No, because last season was a shortened off season. So this is his first full off season.
Yeah.
As an NBA player.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And so, so guys like that, I just want to see how they come out in preseason. Like, do we see a new version of either of those guys? Is there anyone else that's obvious, like a rotation battle type guy who we feel confident is going to be on the team? We just don't know what their role is going to be.
Well, I was going to go over Poku's pre and post All-Star stats real quick, if that's okay. Just so people...
That's fine. You're allowed to do
that. True shooting percentage, 45% pre All-Star break. 52%, which is not like crazy, but it's like, oh, okay, that's like a normal player. Plus minus, he was a minus 3.5 pre post. He's plus 0.4. That's pretty good. He did play a more significant role in the second half of the season. 16 minutes per game in the first half, 28 minutes in the second half. But he averaged 12, 7, and 4 post All-Star break, which is like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then 5, 4, and 1 in the first half of the season. 5, 4, 1.
Okay.
27% from 3 first half of the season, 31% from 3 second half. It's like from real bad to like pretty bad, but acceptably bad. The weirdest one though, like all the shooting stuff is like, yeah, he sucks first half. First half of the season, 56% from the free throw line.
He probably took like 5.
Up to 76%. Yeah, what were the free throw attempts? He was 9 of 16 in the first half of the season. In 42 games, he took 16 free throws. Second half of the season, this is in 19 games, he was, 26 of 34.
Okay.
That's still like something that to me just is like, it's all mental for Poku. You know,
Well, he definitely falls into the camp of avoiding contact, and even though his rim finishing numbers are really good, but I suspect a lot of those are coming either in transition or on cuts because
yeah,
he is good at that stuff.
yeah,
But
He's-
yeah, those two guys, because I just looked over the roster and like, yeah, you can make a case for Jerry or Trey Mann, but those guys are only entering their second season.
yeah,
So like, I'm not freaking out about them one way or the other, regardless of what happens. But Baze and Poku, I mean, Baze is obviously entering a contract year,
it's time. Yeah,
and same with Poku. I mean, they haven't announced it yet. I'm sure they will, but they have to do his extend or not his extension,
pick
but
up his
his
option.
pick up his option.
Yeah.
And then the following season would be when they have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe Poku. I'm deciding if I want to
Do it, do it, do it.
Maybe Poku could be a rookie extension guy. Do you think there's a chance of that?
I don't think it's impossible.
Okay. All right. It felt weird coming out of my mouth, but you have to remember that just because I say rookie extension doesn't mean rookie extension max. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, is there a chance he plays well enough this season where the Thunder are like, we have to try to lock him up at a reasonable cost right now because we are expecting year 4 Poku to set the world on fire.
That'd be awesome. That'd be great.
But yeah, don't you feel like those two guys have the most to gain or lose in preseason?
Yeah, I think that they're specifically Darius. I think that it'd have to be really, really bad for Poku to just be like, oh yeah, okay, we might, jettison him, in January. For Baisley, I feel like this is make or break season. Like
For sure.
this is it. Like this is it for him, and he could be. I mean, to me, I would bet more on a Hami style trade with him this year than I would him getting a new contract with the Thunder next summer.
Yeah, and that's the one part where I think you will learn something from preseason, because if they come out game 1
Yeah,
and Mark Daigneault isn't starting Baze,
yeah,
at this point I would actually kind of be surprised. I know we've talked about all the different machinations, all the different potential starting lineups, but a lot of that, or all of it, was with Chet in mind
yeah,
when we were thinking about Chet and JRE. Now that Chet's out of the picture, like if Baze isn't starting preseason game 1, that's kind of interesting.
yeah. It is.
And then to see what he does, and then if he does not start, who is he going to off the bench? Like, is he really going to bring Poku in as the backup 5? Which I'm open to, but is he going to do that, or
No,
is
no, he's
Poku
not.
going to be the first choice off the bench as like the backup 4? I don't know who's starting in this scenario, but
Yeah.
I mean, but it could be like someone like J Dub, or maybe they do a double big lineup with Jerry and someone.
Who would get you most excited if they were in the starting lineup? Because we know it's going to be Shea, Dort, Giddey, and probably Jeremiah. Like,
Yeah.
but who's the other guy? Who's the other guy?
I think you just okay.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did. I mean, obviously either of the rookies, like J Dub or not J Will, J Dub or Jang.
Yeah.
If either of those guys are starting,
If he starts, I think J Dub would be like, "Oh, this is cool." Like,
this
yes.
is cool. And then Jang, if he
If he
started,
started Jang, I would be like, "Oh,
wow, they're tanking. That's what I would think.
I was just about to say, I'd be like really excited that like Jang, that they think pretty highly of what he is already.
I mean, they think that they're going to think that regardless. They just gave 3 first-round picks for him.
I mean, I guess, but like he's got a long way to go. I would just say
That's what I'm saying. Like if he starts, okay.
But if he starts over Baze and Poku, who the Thunder know a lot about, I would feel a lot better about Jang going into the season. That's all I would
see. I mean, you're a pessimist, or you're an optimist. I'm a pessimist. That would make me feel worse about Baze and Poku, and actually worse about Poku specifically. If those two guys,
I hear you.
being with this team for multiple seasons now, can't start over Ousmane Dieng, who most people would consider one of the bigger projects in that lottery range.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be both a good and bad look.
Yeah.
For the team.
James Anderson in the chat says that tanking would be starting Jay Will next to Jeremiah.
We think that now, but what if he comes out and he's a plus minus king?
He could be.
Would that shock anyone?
He's Nick Collison 2.0.
Yeah, it could happen. So yes, I agree. He was not good in summer league, but it wouldn't shock me if he just came out and did the little things, Andrew. And all of a sudden, we're looking up and he's like a +5 net rating on this team that isn't winning a lot of games.
Yeah, he does have a great smile too, and is just an incredibly nice person.
He does. He has a great smile.
Was so nice to my kids, specifically.
Too nice.
Almost too nice.
They don't deserve it.
No.
I hung out with Andrew's kids. I actually hung out with Luke, hanging out with Andrew's kids, and seeing them be so excited for the giant, expensive Lego thing that Luke had purchased for himself. That was one of the highlights of my trip.
That was good. That was really good. Luke told them about what he got, and my oldest son was like, "Dude, that costs $500." That was so good. Anything else that you are looking forward to? I would like to just see, any of these rookies, on the court. Like, I'm excited to see any of them play. But Jang specifically, I think is going to be really interesting, just because he is now thrown in, and we just kind of mentioned it, but he's kind of thrown into this like Poku Bays bucket of like, okay, these are forwards that have a ton of potential. Will any of them reach it? And I think that's where like competition will come into play, where it really is going to be like sink or swim for a lot of these guys this season. Like there's going to be guys that will lose their spot on the Thunder this season because of how they play.
Oh yeah, for sure. Which will be kind of nice. I mean, because in past seasons, there were legitimately times where just weren't any other options.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, all right, I'm just going to buy into this. I'm just going to buy into whoever it is. I mean, obviously that first year, I guess that was 2 seasons ago, when Ty Jerome had like a really nice season, and I was like totally in at the Ty Jerome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also interested in just the other teams around the league, like who just gets off to a bad vibe start, not necessarily like their win-loss record in preseason, but looking around the league, it does not feel like there are a lot of fan bases who think their team is going to underperform as of right now.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's gonna be wrong in multiple cases. And I'm trying to figure out what teams it's going to be, especially like in the Western Conference, because we feel pretty secure in teams like OKC and Houston. They're going to be down towards the bottom. Utah, San Antonio. But like of that next group of teams who all their fan bases are either hoping or expecting play-in or playoffs.
There's not 12 playoff spots.
There's not. Who is going to be like the team that falls off? And there's probably going to be a major injury in preseason, because I feel like there is every year. But yeah, who is it going to be where it's not even an injury thing? It's just like something's off with this team immediately.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you look at it, I think there's 4 teams you would say that they're not making the play-in: Thunder, Rockets, Spurs, Jazz. Was there one more?
And honestly, maybe now that you say it out loud like that, maybe this does end up being like a season where everyone gets satisfaction, because if there's 4 teams that are obviously tanking, that means that there's only one team
is going to miss the play-in.
Yeah, and there's probably going to be an injury. There's probably going to be injury team, and they'll just, like there was with the Blazers last year, where they just come to accept, okay, this isn't our year, and that would allow those other 10 teams to all make the play-in.
Yep.
And everyone could be happy. Maybe the Kings do have a shot now that we're talking it out.
I think they do. It would be very sad if they did not make the play-in, because one team is going to be, unless you're right, unless it is just a pure injury situation, is really going to look back at like preseason stuff and be like, oh man, like this is not working like we thought it would.
So maybe the East is more interesting because who are the only obvious, and honestly, it's hard to say they're like obvious tanking teams because it feels like Detroit and Orlando seem more interested in moving forward
Yeah,
than the
Detroit,
teams in the
Orlando,
West.
Indy,
Indy could be one.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
Those would be like the 4 teams in the East that I would say are most likely. But like Charlotte still has a lot of NBA players where it's like they're going to be pulled more to the middle than the Rockets, Spurs, Thunder, or Jazz. You know,
we will see, Andrew.
I mean, they've got LaMelo, they've got Terry Rozier, they've got guys that are competent. They just don't.
You just named all of them.
Did I just name all?
Dude, their roster is so young.
What's Gordon Hayward's status?
I don't know, dude. Okay, their current roster. I'm just looking at Basketball Reference.
Yeah,
Their current roster, which it looks, I'm not going to count them all out, but it's probably around 17 to 20 guys.
yeah.
6 are rookies.
6.
3 are second-year players.
Yeah.
And then another 2 are third-year players, which is LaMelo and Nick Richards. But more than half of their roster is like under 22.
Yeah.
And so you're counting on a lot from Gordon Hayward, Mason Plumlee, Terry Rozier, Kelly Oubre Jr., Cody Martin, PJ Washington, Jalen McDaniels. Like,
yeah,
that's their quote unquote good rotation. But after that, it like falls off a cliff and it's all super young guys, many of which like we're not particularly high on at the moment. Like JT Thor, Kai Jones, James Bouknight.
Yeah. Mark Williams should be able to come in and play a role.
Should.
I think he and LaMelo are like the same age.
Oh, are they really?
Yeah. But like LaMelo and Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward, if he plays, and Mason Plumlee, like those guys, like, you're not going to be like a 20-win team. Like you're going to win like 27 games or something.
Yeah, but at the same time, like that is a team that has been pushing towards the playoffs these last couple of years.
I know.
And then getting decimated in the play-in. If they have a step back like that, just to like 27, 28 wins, like that's crisis mode. Like then it's like, what are we doing with this roster? Why do we have these guys on the roster? This is the whole reason why they wanted Kenny Atkinson.
I know. Because
more than half the roster is super young guys, and they needed a development coach.
This is why you don't press that friggin' button. This is why you don't do this.
And I guess the buttons were the Rozier,
Hayward.
Yeah, Hayward in particular. I think you can justify the Rozier one.
Yeah, because that came in the Kemba Walker trade.
Yeah.
But it's also why, like, you look back and we have been doing these Summers of Sam series, which we'll pick back up at some point. But this is why they didn't, try to trade for like young-ish, meaningful players. Like they traded for Chris Paul with Russell Westbrook, but they knew it was only going to be for one season at the most. You didn't go get like a 24-year-old guy that was going to play, or a 25-year-old guy that's going to play for your team, long term. Rozier's good. Like Rozier's a good player, like a very helpful NBA player that I think if he were on a better team that people would, recognize, the kind of player that he was. I mean, last year his stats are kind of like shocking when you look at them. 19, 4 and 4. He shot 44% from the field, not great, but 37% from 3 on 8 attempts per game. Like there's a lot of teams that could use a player like that. And he's only 27. Like he's a good player.
Should they make the Rush trade, Andrew?
Should they make the Rush trade?
Yeah, should the Hornets make the Rush trade?
No.
Are you sure?
That's the absolute worst thing to do, because I still think Russ has enough left in the tank.
Double down on the button, Andrew.
Drag them to 37 wins.
See if the button can be pushed further.
And then they'll be picking 15th or 14th in the draft. And then it really is like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? I just lost Alex for a second.
I'm back.
Yeah, to me, it's just they're the team that gets brought up the most when it comes to Westbrook and like but man, they are the team that needs to stay away the most because they could, if they end up with like the 4th pick or the 5th pick in this draft, that's like the best case scenario for them. Because if you can add a legitimate player next to LaMelo, like that's what they need the most. They don't need Russell Westbrook. Like you got to stay away from that. I know that Jordan loves Russ, loves his mentality. I would bet on them bringing him in, but man, you got to stay away. They just have to. I mean, they have to stay away from that scenario. They have to let this ride out. They got to be bad. To me, that's just what they have to do.
Well, Thunder fans should be rooting against Charlotte because if they do start to falter, a lot of the SGA trade talk will be shifted away to LaMelo, even though he is even younger and is theoretically locked up for even longer.
Yeah. We didn't mention PJ Washington. PJ Washington's a good player.
Yeah.
I'm
just saying one of these teams is going to disappoint. They're the most obvious one to me.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think the Knicks are another one that could as well, but like,
oh, careful, Andrew.
They live in a constant state of disappointment, though.
Do you want to talk about the rankings?
Yeah, I do. ESPN, CBS Sports. Anybody else trying to get the rankings clickbait out there right now?
Mine will be released today.
Al Baby Cake's rank. Hashtag Al Baby Cake rank. Yeah, so Shea specifically was ranked 36th by CBS Sports and 48th by ESPN. I sent this to the group chat, but like I just can't bring myself to care about these rankings. It's just like, one, I just don't know how much the people that are like doing the work for these care about these. So it's like, how much am I supposed to really care about this? It just lights Twitter on fire is all it does. But yeah, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to get mad if you want. But my bigger takeaway was just how like lists like this, which are very hard to do, if we're going to give these people a little bit of credit. I mean, I'm not going to do it, but if you wanted to go do this yourself, I'd imagine that'd be really tough to do, Andrew.
Do it yourself.
Just try to think of 100 players on the spot and rank them. That'd be tough to do.
Yeah.
But I do think these lists are instructive for how talented the league is. Like the fact that on ESPN's ranking, Tyrese Halliburton, player I really like.
Yeah.
He is, and after the end of the season he had, where he's putting like, double numbers up frequently, he's at 59.
Yeah.
59th best player. Like that is pretty awesome for the league.
Yeah.
That we're nearing the 60th best player, and there's someone like Tyrese Halliburton. It's not, and like yes, there's a little projection involved there, but he's more like established than just like a rookie where you're having to do a ton of projection. So like we know he's good, and he's getting ranked there. Everyone was freaking out about Shea being 48. Totally understand. Scrolling down just a little bit more, Darius Garland at 46. Like I really like Darius Garland, and the fact that they were able to come up with 45 names better than Darius Garland, like that's pretty awesome for the league. So I mean, I came away from this list saying, I understand why they're talking about expansion, because the league is so talented right now.
Yeah. I mean, LaMelo Ball at 41. I mean, how do we feel about like LaMelo Ball, DeJounte Murray, Tyrese Maxey, CJ McCollum, Darius Garland, all being
that's why like, and maybe this is revealing too much about myself, but doing these type of rankings where you're just ranking them as basketball players, I can't do it. My brain cannot handle those comparisons. Whereas if you asked me to do like a trade value ranking, I would have like a better idea in my brain. And now if you hate me, you could say, well, that's because you don't know ball, Alex. But I would argue that it's because there's so much context involved.
Yeah.
Like how do you compare that group that you just talked about?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you compare someone like DeJounte Murray, who last year was the lead ball handler for a team and is now going to be playing off ball a lot of times to Trae Young? Like, how do you even compare that to
My
like a
guess is
CJ
that
McCollum?
DeJounte, this will be the high. He will drop 10 spots next year, only because like he's not going to make the All-Star team in the Eastern Conference,
Yeah.
and he's not going to have. His stats are going to take a huge hit, and like it is like, context is huge within all of this, just because it's
Massive, and that's why I wouldn't recommend trying to do one of these lists. I'm glad somebody does it because it's just fun to scroll and look at pictures.
yeah.
That's the reason I enjoy it.
It is, yeah.
It's funny though. Like Russ is 65 on ESPN's rank.
Yeah.
And then on CBS's rank, he is 98.
Yeah, I saw
98.
That. Yeah.
But it's so funny how they'll have like, I want to know things like, how does PJ Tucker end up at 93? He's ahead of Franz Wagner.
Yeah, that's wild. Franz Wagner's not even on the top 100.
Like, how do you even compare those two players? I don't even know how you do it. Like, how do you decide who is the better NBA player? Like, obviously, most humans would want Franz Wagner on their team.
How do you have Keegan Murray and Brandon Clark on your list, but not Franz Wagner, which is kind of wild.
That actually, yeah, Brandon Clark specifically, that's pretty bizarre.
Yeah.
But yeah, so other Thunder players. So Giddey did make the ESPN list.
He did.
Shout out to him.
Yeah,
he is
81st.
81st, yes.
Which right ahead of Paolo Banchero and right behind Karis LeVert. That tells you as much as you need to know about these lists. Like this list makes no sense. Like
it makes no sense because it's impossible for it to make sense. How do you compare those players?
Yeah, I know. Like Karis LeVert and Clint Capella are the two guys ahead of him. It's like, I don't know. You put Ben Simmons is at 76. He didn't play last year. Is he gonna play this year? Like, does he play basketball anymore? I don't know.
We don't know.
I wouldn't have put him on the list. I would say that if you didn't play last year, you don't get on the list.
And then for CBS, it does not appear they put Giddey on the list, but they put Dort. Dort makes an entry at 86 between Seth Curry and Kristaps Porzingis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I actually kind of like him next to Seth Curry. Obviously, they play much different roles, but like in terms of value, I could kind of see that.
Yeah. Yeah. And even like for Blazers fans, like Anthony Simons is ranked 91st. Like, oh my gosh, we just gave this guy the max. And ESPN thinks he's the 91st best player in the league. Just it is a good, like you said, it's a good sign for the NBA that you can list 90 players before you get to him.
Oh, dude, Anthony Simons in another era absolutely would be like a face of a franchise guy for someone, for some bad team.
Yeah.
He absolutely could play that role. He did it last year, and he was super efficient and really good at it.
Yep.
I mean, he could be scoring 25 points for some new franchise in Las Vegas.
Yep. Yeah. But then, like, Tyler Hero's 61st. It's like, who would you rather have? You know? Like, how do you put Tyler Hero at 61 and Simons at 91? Like that's where it's like these lists are like so bogus and like so difficult to do that it's just like not even worth your time investing anything emotionally into them.
That's why I think you have to do it as like, that's why I think trade value lists are a lot easier to do because you can actually lay out what your rules are at the beginning.
Right. And this is why Seth Partnow does tiers and doesn't do this. Because he knows that if he ranks Tyrese Halliburton at 59 and then Vooch at 57, it's like of course you'd rather have Tyrese Halliburton over Vooch, and like he was a much better player than he was last year. What are you talking about? You know, this is why you like throw like 20 guys into a tier, and he's like, yeah, all these guys are the same.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can totally get it, even though people will take those and see them in alphabetical order in the tier and still be like, you got this. No, I didn't. I just put them in alphabetical order.
Okay, but Andrew, let's say going into next season.
Yeah.
How many players would you expect? How many Thunder players would you expect would be in a top 100 ranking?
It's a good question. Now that is a good question. I would say it's probably about what it is now. Like, what can a Thunder player do to get themselves onto this list?
It is very hard because you look at some of the other bad teams, and I don't see a ton of Pistons on here. And obviously, Pistons fans like a lot of their players.
Oh, they love their guys, but there's
Like,
I think there's one guy on the list. I think
Yes,
it's
is
Cade.
Sadiq Bey on any of these lists?
Oh, I didn't see Sadiq on there.
No, he is not.
Sadiq is not on here, and like they think of Sadiq as like this great player. Like if you were to ask a Pistons fan, like, would you rather have Tobias Harris, who ranked 56, or Sadiq Bey? They'd be like, oh yeah, give me Sadiq every single day of the week.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, maybe a guy like J-Dub could get on there if he has a great season.
Yeah, he would have to be like first team all rookie.
But even if he is, because Sadiq Bey was probably first team all rookie.
Yeah, true.
You know, I just think that you have to win, and you have to be. People have to know who your guys are, and I just don't think they'll do that this year. Like I don't think that's where this is going. I think Dort could sneak onto the list, but I don't foresee anybody else. I think Chet could have made the list too, had he played, but he's not going to play. So I don't know. Someone would have to really surprise. Trey Mann's another guy that has a chance to do it, but he's got to be really, really good. I just wouldn't predict that would happen. So I would just predict like Shea Dort, Giddey being the three that make the list next year.
I'm looking through the list, seeing if there's like an obvious guy who is just here mostly because he's on a good team. And if he was not on a good team, no one would care.
Yeah. I mean,
I mentioned PJ Tucker. Like if PJ Tucker doesn't make the top 100,
PJ Tucker's on a bad team. There's no way. Brandon Clark. If Brandon Clark were on the Rockets last year, does Brandon Clark?
There's no way he makes it.
There's no chance.
Same with like Grant Williams, who made both of the lists.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, let's take a quick break, and after that, we're going to talk about. We're going to preview Sam Presti's press conference for tomorrow. And we're back after that quick break. Sam is going to address the media tomorrow, which is like the official, like the Thunder season's back marker for every year. And so I went back and looked at a few of Sam's press conferences, specifically his very first one that he had, the one after Kevin Durant left, and then the one at the end of this past season, just so I could pull a couple things from it, just to kind of remind people of some things that he said. But just to like think about like is he the longest tenured GM right now? I think that he is. Now that Ainge has moved on to Utah and is like, he's not the longest tenured GM, but he's one of the longest tenured GMs in the league and has been just kind of the setting force. And I wanted to kind of look back and see like, how did he lead when he was first here? And how did he lead in the moment where the Thunder had like the most like crushing blow to the team, you know, in franchise history? And hopefully that will be the biggest blow in franchise history for the Thunder. Yeah, how did he lead? What did he say? Is it all similar to how he speaks now? So I just wanted to kind of look back at those. So here is Sam at his very first presser in the history of the Thunder. They weren't even called the Thunder yet, I don't think. They were just like the Oklahoma City team Oklahoma City
The
basketball.
Boomers.
The Boomers. What? By the way, what did you want them to be called before they were named Thunder?
I remember at the time, of the names that were being bandied about,
Yeah,
I liked the Barons
yeah,
and I liked the Thunderbirds.
yeah, yeah. I like the Barons as well because then you can go black and gold, which is cool.
Yeah.
Anyways, all right. Here's Sam.
And part of that reason is I feel like our vision for our team and our players is very closely linked to the identity of this city and this state. What we know about Oklahoma City is that it's a city that has great values, hard workers, persistence and resiliency are part of the identity of this community. And when we sit back as a basketball staff and we look at our methodology and we look at the vision for our team and the type of players that we want to try to put in uniform for this community, they run very parallel. So we're just invigorated by the prospect of seeing our basketball team grow with this community because it seems so closely linked. And I think it's a unique opportunity in pro sports that you find that.
So, like a couple things that stood out to me when I was watching this. One, Sam has really stepped it up in his style since his first days.
Yeah, I was going to say he wouldn't wear that type of collared shirt,
He's got-
especially unbuttoned at the top, like wide. That was like almost a Brian Colangelo collar.
It really was. You've got to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Down to Dunk and hit subscribe, and then go just watch these because it's kind of comical. Like his haircut, his like glasses that he obviously got from like Eye Masters or something like that.
He looks like the way we dress nicely in like high school.
Yes.
That was definitely the look. Which I mean, this is 2008, so it's very close. Yeah.
Yeah. Second thing that stood out to me was like if I didn't see what he looked like, it would have been impossible for me to tell you what year he said these things.
Yeah.
Because he's saying, this is what stood out to me the most when I watched this. It was like, he is saying the same stuff today that he did way back when. Like he leads today like he did back then, which I think is like so impressive for a guy. Because this is 13 years apart. It's like, man, it's pretty impressive.
You can tell though, like he has such a more commanding presence now.
Yeah.
Than he did back then.
Yeah, it's true.
Like the way he does his monologues now, where it's like completely off the cuff, but or I mean, it feels like it's off the cuff.
Yeah,
it's
definitely not off the cuff. He's got pages of notes.
Yeah,
but yeah,
but the way he's able to deliver those now, he's like a pro at it. And this is probably like the first time he had to give one of those.
And they're way longer. Like this press conference, this was his very first one. Let me see how long it was, because it was not that long. 30 minutes. Yeah. The one he did at the end of this past season, 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Oh, that was the one where he said, "I'll just be here whenever."
Yeah, I'll answer as many questions as you have. And even then, I don't think media knew what questions to ask. Like, what do we ask an NBA general manager?
Yeah.
Okay, here's one more from that very first presser.
I think with our guys down there, and we've seen those of both Kevin and Jeff last year, rookies are going to have peaks and valleys. There's going to be nights where they are exciting and spectacular, and there'll be other nights where they look like rookies. And, that's part of the learning process. That's part of development. Organizationally, with our group, we talk about development being a process and not necessarily an event. And I think that we'll see Russell continue to develop, and DJ and the other young players that we have, Kevin and Jeff as well. And as they move through that, it's how they respond to some of the adversities that they encounter, but also how they manage some of their successes. And I watch that closely. Our coaches watch that closely. And I think we'll learn a lot about our team and our players as we continue to look at it that way. But Russell's an exciting player. He fits a lot of the core principles that we're looking for, and DJ as well.
It's just so interesting hearing him talk about these guys that are like so clearly going to be Hall of Fame players.
Yeah.
Back in like these like moments of like the beginning of their careers, but he talks about them just the same ways that he talks about like Poku even. Like it's just kind of wild to me. I just thought those were really interesting clips and like interesting moments from those pressers. It's like it's a lot of the same language. I would agree with you that he was not quite as commanding and obviously hadn't had like the experience up to that point, but still it's like the same dude for the most part with his words in particular.
Yeah, he very rarely strays from like what we think of as Sam Presti in a press conference, like that character. The one time he did, it was when I was looking back for Summers of Sam. It was either after the OK3. Oh no! You know what? It was after the MVP season.
Yeah,
and he like made a very direct statement about like we're going after everyone. Like we're making calls on everyone. Like it must have been his way to like calm the fan base down. Coming off this fun season, but then it's a disappointment. And obviously we had just lost KD, and Russ at that point hadn't signed or I guess he had signed a 1-year extension, but he was eligible for another one. And it was more aggressive from him than we typically see, and like more revealing. But outside of like that moment, there just hasn't been a lot where he strays from this general character.
Yeah, definitely. And to like reiterate that, here's Sam, like his presser right after the first time that he talked to the media after Kevin Durant left.
We're disappointed that Kevin Durant's tenure with the Thunder organization has come to a close. We'd all, like to think that it could continue forward, but that's not the case. And in these situations, I think before we talk about the future, I do think it's important to be very grateful and thankful. And I'd like to thank Kevin for not only what he did for the team and our organization on the floor, but also for what it is that he did for Oklahoma. I think he was synonymous with the Oklahoma City community as well as the Thunder organization. And very rarely in pro sports are you in a situation where a player has that kind of relationship and meaning to a city. And I think he helped Oklahoma City and Oklahoma in general in many ways, in addition to just being a fantastic basketball player. So we need to be thankful for that, and we absolutely are. At the same time, we're incredibly proud of the accomplishments that have taken place over the last 8 years. 4 out of 6 Western Conference Finals, as most of you know, being, I think, second in the league in playoff series victories and having the 4th best record in all of professional sports. He was a contributor to all of those things. And as an organization, we should be incredibly proud of what his tenure represented.
What an incredibly difficult time to have to talk. It's like the biggest failure of your franchise and losing one of the best players ever. One, it's like he didn't have to do that, like he didn't have to go talk to the media. He was not required to. He did anyways. And then just to speak graciously about Kevin first, I thought it was okay. He just is always taking the high road kind of thing, which I think that continues to be the case with Sam. But in a time like that, it'd be easy to go low, especially you could start with he joined the 73 win Warriors and that team that just beat us in the Western Conference Finals. Those are the things that we're all talking about, but he takes a completely different path, which I think that ultimately, like, that's the right thing to do. But in moments like that are like highly emotional and frustrating, like it's more difficult than than you think it is to take the high road.
Yeah, I mean, even saying like he's going to a very talented team, like,
Yeah.
which is barely a dig, but even just like anything, just a morsel of something we can interpret as a dig, he avoids.
Yeah.
Also, he's buttoning his collar now,
Yes.
which I think is good. I think
Damn haircut.
he's not doing the splayed collar anymore, which I really feel like you can only do if you've got a thick neck.
Mhm.
If you got a skinny neck, it just looks like your shirt is like eating your head. You got to button those collar buttons, and he did that, and he's looking like the version of Sam that we know now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's got designer glasses. Maybe not as nice as the ones he has in these future ones, but
much more modern haircut as well.
Oh yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, looking good, Sam. Here's another one from that presser.
None of us are under the illusion that Kevin Durant, would be here forever. We understand that this is a business, and he has to do what he feels is best for him. But we also understand that part of the NBA and part of sports in general is change, even when you'd prefer that wasn't the case. So. In terms of moving forward, obviously we have a lot of different scenarios that we plan for under these circumstances. We're going to take a step back, look at those carefully, try to make quality, thoughtful decisions. And those of you that have been around us and been with us for the 8 years we've been here, we've never been impulsive. We've never been reactionary. We've never been, careless with putting this franchise in the best possible position to be strong and be healthy and be competitive. And I feel like we've been able to do that. So we wouldn't change that right now. So we'll be careful and thoughtful and hopefully intelligent about how we go forward.
Again, just like such a hard time to have to talk about team building. So we just lost this incredible cog in our system. He's also wearing sweaters. Like this is where he jumped into wearing sweaters more often instead of like a coat. But yeah, just like always calm. I didn't put any of these clips in here. Maybe I should have, but from the Chet press conference, I think a lot of fans felt like sad, frustrated, whatever. And then like I think after you listen to Sam, you're like, oh, okay. Like Sam is always like trying to see like the bigger picture and all of this, which is what his job is to see the bigger picture. But like in critical moments is like still trying to see the bigger picture, I think is, pretty great for like the leader of your franchise.
So he's speaking tomorrow or today?
He speaks tomorrow at 10:30 Central Time. He'll talk to the media. It's probably going to be on OKCThunder.com and all that.
Is it in person or on Zoom?
It's in person. I will be there. Yeah, the Chet presser was just on Zoom, mostly just because it was like so impromptu. But yeah, this will be in person at the practice facility. So I'll be there in person. It'll be interesting. Anything that you want to hear from Sam tomorrow? I still have a few more clips, but just
anything from Sam tomorrow. I mean, I'd be interested. He probably gave a presser after the draft, didn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in that case, he probably already answered it, and it was probably not that interesting. But just if he was willing to talk about why he made the deal he did for Ousmane Dieng.
Yeah.
Like what he envisions his role in the NBA as, and how do you do that on a team with so many ball handlers? How do you achieve that on a team with so many ball handlers?
Yeah.
That is definitely a question I have about Ousmane Dieng. As I've talked about for a long time.
That's a good question.
Because that seems to be the thing that people get excited about Ousmane Dieng. How do you do that on a team with Shea and Giddey?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe I'll ask him tomorrow.
Okay, all right. Well, hey, if you have questions in the chat, throw them in.
Yeah.
maybe Andrew will steal them
Yeah.
and use them for his own fame
Yeah.
and gain.
Let's go to one last one from that Durant presser.
Do you put any part of Kevin's departure on yourself personally?
I mean, I'm responsible for everything. I will accept whatever amount of responsibility that you feel I deserve.
How should Oklahomans feel about Kevin Durant today?
How should they feel about him? Listen. I'm not going to tell people how to feel, not to judge or what have you. I just think that what he, represented for the city was something larger than basketball. I think that he arrived at a time where the city was also, on an upward trajectory. A 20-year-old, young man in an aspirational city. People kind of snicker and kind of sneer when we talk about that kind of stuff, but my guess is you're probably not doing that right now. We talk and you guys would hear me say this connection in this community, and the typing would stop and the eyes would roll. But I was saying that truthfully and authentically because I know how this business works, and I know that these days are possible. And we need to recognize what exactly took place here over the last 8 years and recognize it and celebrate it. They should feel thankful, grateful. They should I can't tell them not to be disappointed. But the one thing I would also say is, the city should be incredibly proud of what they've helped create.
I was kind of blown away by the perspective that he had in that moment, because you look back at it now, I think it's easy to say those things today and even a few years ago, in the moment, to recognize those things. I think it's difficult. I think it's difficult in any scenario in life where you're handed something that's terrible to have that kind of perspective in the moment. I think it's just incredibly difficult. And just kind of, and a lot of times I think that we do Sam a disservice by saying things like, oh, he never really says anything in his press conferences and yada, yada, or whatever. A lot of times he's just not saying what we're feeling, in those moments, which I think is not necessarily always the right things to say or feel. But having that perspective, I think is pretty good.
I also think he understands that his role should not be to be making news and making
I think it's the
headlines.
last thing Sam wants to do is to have one of his quotes make the front of Sports Center or whatever. Having gratefulness in the moment and thankfulness for what happened will never
be on the ticker.
Run front page on it.
Breaking. Sam Presti, gracious.
Sam Presti, grateful, thankful for the way that Kevin played in Oklahoma City and impacted the community. Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned how he's probably not the longest tenured. He is third. I mean, if you count Pop as a executive and Pat Riley as two. Presti's right there, and then it jumps to who's the Golden State guy? Bab.
Yeah.
Is that his first name?
Yes.
Bob. Is it Bob?
Yes, it is. I don't know.
Bob Myers.
Myers. Yes.
Just saying Bob. It's how could a guy named Bob possibly be the GM of the Warriors?
All I could think of was Bob Muscala that whole time was the name that I knew. It was Bob M, and then my brain instantly just went Muscala, and I couldn't.
But the gap between Bob Myers and Sam Presti is 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Sam Presti is old.
Yeah.
In terms of him being a GM in this league,
mm-hmm.
kind of wild.
Yeah.
Crazy. But yeah, I'm not expecting any bombshells tomorrow, Andrew.
No, there will be no bombshells. Sam does not do that, but he does communicate, and it's something that I think needs to be recognized. I think that you can hear a lot of things about the Thunder, the way that they handle PR and stuff like that, and be yeah, it's you don't get the access, you don't get the whatever, and but there are teams out there like the Knicks and the Clippers that are 1,000 times worse than the Thunder to deal with. Like the Knicks haven't even announced when their media day is. And it should be either Friday or Monday, depending on, when they decide to do it. But they didn't tell them when it is or if they're getting players. They didn't have an end of season press conference. The Knicks didn't. They didn't do exit interviews with players. They just said, nope, we're not doing them. We'll see you guys in the fall.
I like rooting against that team.
Yeah.
I don't talk about it a lot, but I do not like Tibbs. And yeah, the way they treat their local media.
A lot of people are like, oh, the local media is awful to these people. It's a two-way street. I'll tell you. It's an absolute two-way street when it comes to the way that they treat the media as well. Like, there's no wonder that they're pissed off all the time.
Yeah.
Because it's such a toxic environment to be in. And the Thunder do not have that going on at all. Okay. A couple things from his 2-hour-long marathon that I thought were just interesting and things to look back on before we go.
Now, we also talk internally about pulling all the time from our community and the aspirational vision that helped reestablish Oklahoma and the history of Oklahoma. And one of the things we talk about is the state motto. I'm sure everybody in here is an expert on the state motto. But for those of you that aren't aware of it, or those of you watching outside of Oklahoma, labor omnia vincit. I brushed up on my Latin pronunciation to make sure. But we've had that in place and talked about that since 2008. But what that means is hard work conquers all. If you go back and look at the real translation in Latin, it's slow work conquers all, because it comes from a long poem by a Greek philosopher named Virgil, who I didn't know a lot about. But that's the mentality of the team. Like, we have a lot of hard work in front of us. We have to grind in and do it. That's what the state's about. That's what the history of the community is about. And that's what the basketball team here is about. And I think our guys are going to be ready and willing, and we're going to see the fruits of that when they come back. Another aspect that I think is important, as I said, we've had one draft. We're heading into our second draft as we continue to reposition and rebuild the team. It also allows us to build some continuity, which is really, in my opinion, very, very important in any sport. It's kind of very tied to the Einstein quote, right? It's the stuff you can't see. A lot of times I think people think sports is all about transactions now, but really the molding and shaping of teams is happening in front of your eyes, and it's really it's like watching grass grow. Continuity is critical to that. Now, the way the system is set up now, and I mean the league system, it's really meant to fracture continuity. It's shorter contracts, player moving all over the place. The way you can overcome that is if you have bottomless financial resources, you can kind of blow through all of those rules. But otherwise, it's layering on younger players to try to build that out. And we've now got some guys that have played 4 years together, 3 years together. We'll add another group. That continuity is really, really important for us to continue to kind of replenish the group and let guys learn each other, play with each other. And through that competition, you'll start to identify the needs that we'll need to fill over time.
So like this part, one, like he tied in like the community stuff, which he's been talking about from the beginning. I played a clip from the beginning where he talked about like the city and team identity, and he wants like the team to kind of mirror, what the city stands for. But then just like talking about like layering on young players, like to me, it's just like reiterates like, man, this is going to take some time to build this team. Like this was just a few months ago. It's before the draft. It was before the lottery. It's before, the team knew who they were getting in the lottery. But I think this just like reiterates that like, yeah, they're going to build slowly. There's not going to be like this accelerator. There's not an accelerator coming. Like it's going to be these young guys, and it's going to be trying to build continuity with these young guys and like trying to build a team with these guys. And it's going to be up to them, when this team gets really good. You have thoughts on that?
No, I got distracted because Tom Ziller just released his top 23 players, 23 or under.
Oh,
and he put Dort on it.
He did.
And I was like, wow. He put him number 22, which I
Wow.
mean, that's pretty good. Ahead of, for instance, Wendell Carter Jr.
I think that's fair. I think Dort's good. I think Dort's a good player. I know there's some Wendell Carter hype out there in the very dregs of the NBA internet.
But Dort doesn't. I'm just surprised. Dort does. I don't feel like Dort gets this kind of love.
Yeah.
From the national media that often.
Yeah.
I mean, people like him because they like his name and he's fun. But I feel like evaluating him as a real player, saying he's a top 23, under 23, that's pretty good.
Wow. Yeah, that is pretty good. Okay, last one. Try to focus, Alex. Come on, stay with me. Stay with me.
Sorry.
We're almost done.
Dude, Presti is so boring. I'm sorry.
Last one.
I know there are some people that get concerned at times when I speak to season ticket holders and stuff like that. I'm out there before games, and a lot of times some of those people, on the floor will say, like, I hope you guys are going to stay the course. Don't deviate from what you're doing. Like, we really want to have a good, sustainable team. I promise you that's not going to be a problem. We understand what we're trying to do. We have the context of history to do that in terms of how long it takes to get, back to the playoffs or consecutive playoff appearances. Everybody can do the math. And we've had one draft, we're going on another. We've got a group of really motivated guys that are hungry and willing to work. And we're really excited about that. Trying to fix things quickly takes a very long time. So we're going to try to avoid making it longer by trying to make it shorter. But the thing I would say is I'm really confident that we're going to be successful. Internally, we talk a lot about the difference between being a clock watcher and a pace setter. And people that watch the clock, to me, are not people that are ultimately extremely successful in whatever they're trying to accomplish. So, you can't have one eye on the clock and one eye on the destination. We need to have two eyes on the path for us to be successful. We'll let other people watch the clock. To me, watching the clock is an indication that you don't think you can do it. Watching the clock is, how much longer I have to stay on this treadmill? How much longer, we want to be the person that puts a towel over the treadmill. And we can just keep going because we believe in a certain set of principles that are going to allow that to happen over time.
So this is where it gets difficult whenever because people want to know, like, okay, when are they gonna be a team that competes? When is this gonna happen? And I think Sam saying this stuff is just like, it's gonna happen when they're ready. And I don't think he has any clue when they're going to be ready. I think you can predict, like, you can have an idea about it, but they're going to play this out the way that it's going to go. And how quickly that goes, like, I don't know. I mean, I think it's one thing, like, as a Thunder fan, you have to just be aware of is that, like, the accelerator that everybody wants to see, like the Donovan Mitchell trade, even the Jared Allen trade that happened with them, or the Karis LeVert trade that happened with the Cavs. Like, these are all like little accelerators that have been like built into the Cavs becoming a team that was suddenly a team that's something could be a top 5 team in the East, top 4 team in the East if everything goes well. I don't foresee the Thunder doing any of that stuff like anytime soon. I think they want this team to mold together and to figure out like which of these young guys are good, and these are Sam's words, not mine. Like, I'm drawing from like the things that Sam has said. And I think those are like the things that you can draw from it.
I think that's true, but I also think that's really easy to say in like year 1, 2, 3 of this.
Yeah.
I think as this goes on, that will be harder and harder because there will be more and more outside forces. Like his plan in the mid 2010s was great.
Mm-hmm.
Until there was a cap spike and Kevin Durant decided to leave and go to the Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
Like, best laid plans are awesome. They look really good, but there's just one thing to mess them up. and we're all going along on this ride with the expectation that there's going to be a pot of honey. No, what is it? A pot of gold.
Honey?
a pot of honey.
Winnie the Pooh?
Just sticky honey, just a bunch of honey at the end of this. And he may feel that way, but there is no guarantee. And
no.
I think the pressure going into next season, if this season goes the way we think it will, is going to be relatively high because the tanking Sixers, who we felt like did it forever, they did it for 4 seasons. So the Thunder entering their 3rd season, and we saw what happened to the Sixers when they tried to do a 4th season. I do think there's a limit to how long you can push this as an organization until some outside force. In the case of the Sixers, it was the league. It could be a player asking out until something happens that screws up all of these plans.
Or just like the players get good.
I mean, that's what we keep saying. I mean, you mentioned that, like, you know, they want to see how these players, you know, how good they are. Like, you got to play them. Like,
you got to play them.
You got to play them. If you're going to play them half the season, our data set is just so small in comparison to other teams. And they're clearly comfortable with that. And I understand, well, obviously we know the reason. And we support that reason because we understand the value of those high draft picks. But like, there's going to be a limit at some point to all of this, and it is coming. And I don't know what is going to be the trigger. And we all hope that it's going to be the trigger is that everyone gets good, like you said. But what happens if that doesn't happen? What happens if this team maxes out as like the 7th or 8th seed in a very difficult West? Then what?
I think that's why you have all like the future picks. That's something to use, you know, like that's where you can use those resources and you're like, oh, okay, like Shea's good. Josh is good. Dort is good. Now we need to go fill out the roster. You know, you hope that somebody in like the J-Dub, Trey Man group, there's like 4 or 5 of those guys that like somebody pops, you know, or maybe the guy they get in 23 will pop.
I mean, somebody has to pop. If this team is going to be as good as we talk about them being, because we've talked about what you need to actually be a championship contender. And like Shea, we think can get to that level. I mean, there are definitely people, you know, in NBA media who think he can be like a back end of a top 10 player in the league. And like, yes, that is one piece that you need, but you also need like multiple all-stars. And like, do we really feel super confident that there are multiple all-stars on this roster as we speak today? Probably not. But you would say that about most young teams, because how do you really project that a guy is going to be an all-star?
We would have said that about the team. We just said, like, we feel confident about Kevin. Like, is Russell Westbrook going to be an all-star? You know, like, that's, you know, I think that we would have been asking ourselves that even after year 1 with him.
Totally. But at the same time, that type of player is super rare, and that type of jump is super rare.
I'm not trying to equate this team to that team when I say that. I'm just saying that, like, we just have no clue. We had no clue then. I think that, you know, we would have just I think then we would have just said, yeah, there's no way like that this team has multiple all-stars on it.
Yeah. The difference is that our opinion of KD was like astronomical.
Oh,
and rightly so.
Yeah. I think so too. Yeah. And that was after draft number 2. We need Chet to be healthy, but if Chet is healthy and can play, I feel confident about him. I feel confident that Lou Dort is like a guy that you can take to the playoffs with you. And then I feel confident about Josh Giddey being like a good player in the league. How good is he? I think that he's got some years to prove what that looks like. Everybody else, I'm like, I don't know. Like, is the Trey Man 20-point quarters? Is that like a real thing? You know,
I'm just
basketball? Like, I don't know.
I'm just like so cautious, and that's why I want to see them play a full season, because you listen to other fans of bad teams, especially like Detroit, Orlando, Houston.
Yeah,
like they're expecting the exact same thing that OKC is right now.
Oh, I know,
and for good reason. Like, they have players that are really good, and in some respects have more players that are expected to be like all-stars or whatever. And all of those teams are not going to be great. Like some of these rebuilding like plans are going to fail.
Mhm.
Obviously, I trust OKC's front office more than those other teams.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like the track record is there. But at the end of the day, it is like the talent that you bring in. And so I don't know. I'm nervous going into this season because I feel like I'm not going to get answers. And that makes me nervous to think that I will be here next year talking, having these same conversations. That's the part that freaks me out.
Yeah.
Because like at some point we need to get hard answers.
Yeah.
And I just don't know when that's going to happen because this is such a slow process.
I know. I don't disagree. It's tough because, like, with Giddey, the guy's not 20 yet. He doesn't turn 20 for a month.
But that's even like that's scary. Like that's seen as a positive, but that means that like, okay, what age should I expect him to be really good and be like a winning part of a contending team? What, like 23? That's 4 years from now.
It's a while.
That's 4 years, and he'll be 23,
Yeah.
which is like a normal age for like a young, good player to like really start showing up in the playoffs, unless you're like Luka level or Ja level or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's 4 years away. That's when I start getting antsy and anxious and like, oh my god, it feels like we're close, but then you start stepping back and it feels like you're way farther away than you thought.
Yeah.
And not for any like bad reason either. It's just like the team's super young, the West is super good.
Mm-hmm.
Like when could this realistically happen? And that's when I start getting anxious.
Yeah. I don't blame you for feeling that way at all. But I just thought it was interesting going back and looking at some of these pressers from Sam. Just like he just leads in like almost the exact same way from day one. Obviously, there's like some style differences and even like command of the microphone differences, but like he just kind of led in the same way throughout this whole thing. So,
and he has had to take on a larger role. I would say like now, because yes, we have Shea, who you could say is like the face of the franchise, but when this team was really good, he was able to kind of just step back and let the team do the talking, and he had superstars. I mean, mega superstars with KD and Russ. And I feel like now Presti has had to become by necessity the face of the franchise.
Oh, it's without a doubt the face of the franchise.
Which slightly alters like how much he has to give up in terms of information.
No, yeah, it is really interesting. And if you're Sam, like you're just hoping that one of these guys can take that mantle from you,
please,
for the next few years. So, all right, thanks so much for listening to our show. Long show, but I just thought there's going to be more interesting things to talk about because we have real basketball back in our lives relatively soon. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you guys again on Friday.